Can we have the Pledge of Allegiance?
She's having fun with a cold too.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Julia Beckman.
Here.
Deb Boyle.
Here.
Mike Davenport.
Here.
Don Renner.
Here.
Craig Pavicic.
Here.
And Rick Pavanato.
Here.
All right. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. And who was that?
Same person.
Okay. Okay. We have a student who we're honoring tonight. She, would you like to
Janice
do
is going to.
Two.
I can introduce her. I am very pleased to recognize Emma Wilson. And so Emma is a senior at North, and we're actually recognizing her for 2 awards. You might have remembered that we recognized her at the National Merit, and we are bringing her back up again now for a National Hispanic Award. But more importantly, I think, for something new for you, we're very excited to share that she also received an award for the Young Arts Foundation of Poetry. She was one of 691 students to be recognized for her poems, and we have asked her to come and read one of the poems that she submitted. So we'll bring Emma up so she can share that.
Oh, cool.
Hi.
Hi.
So this poem is Obituary 2, no title. My mother keeps things for the purpose of using them later. I don't. Friends and things collected across countries. I don't. People who can roll their tongues in little circles. I can't. It's genetics, ours, of broken ovaries, the end of the bell curve. In January of 39, Sikorsky says war cannot be localized. In July of 39, says bombs do not scare them. In November of 39, says we will fight back. In March, Abba Kovner fights to pierce the veil of English. In 39, says do not trust those who try to deceive you, carrying dynamite, carrying paralysis. My mother keeps people like jewelry in glass boxes, sewing histories with no thread. Thank you.
So on behalf of the board, I'm going to present you with a certificate of achievement for the 2017 National Hispanic Recognition Program and for your merit winner for poetry in the Young Arts Foundation. So congratulations. Plans for next year yet?
Not yet.
Not yet?
They're back soon.
All right. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Emma.
This
Thanks
is a
to your
great
parents,
time if
too.
you would like to escape the business department.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Congratulations.
That's the one that saves all that stuff.
No. I saw it. Okay. Our next workshop item is the presentation by potential community engagement partner. And would you like to take over?
Sure.
Dr. Peeble?
Yep. Jill and I are going to kind of work through a little bit of this, and then we'll bring them on up here. So the board has been working on both community engagement for quite a while and a master facilities plan for quite a while. This is where those 2 items come together, and we're going to bring forward here the George K. Baum and Company et al. To kind of present a proposal for how we can move forward with these items. Jill, anything else?
This is Paul Hanley and Marcia Sutter who are with us tonight. We're excited to hear from them.
So you got a big old packet in front of you. We're going to invite them up here to this table so they can kind of join in on part of the meeting to do the presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I don't have a poem tonight, but I do have 2 quotes, and they appear on the first page of your handout.
Yeah, they're great.
And the first quote is from Henry David Thoreau, and it reads, "The greatest compliment that was ever paid me was when one asked me what I thought and attended to my answer." And I think what that quote tells you is that listening matters, and it's what our approach is about. It's focused on listening to the taxpayer and listening to parents and staff and students and getting the community's involvement in this planning process rather than just the board or staff, et cetera. And then the second quote is from Bryant McGill, an author, and it reads, "Every shortcut has a price usually greater than the reward." And so today we're going to talk about a lot of steps and a lot of things that we think you should, hoops that you should jump through. And at one point you're going to say, oh my gosh, that's a lot of stuff to do. But I think it's what it takes these days to try and build public support for public projects. And so hopefully you will think it's sage advice and follow some of the steps that we're recommending. My name is Paul Hanley. I'm a senior vice president with George K. Bauman Company, and I've spent the last 24 years working with cities, counties, school districts, community colleges, fire districts, rec districts, et cetera, again, in trying to build public support for public projects. During the last 3 years, I've worked with 30 clients on successful ballot measures. Our firm was involved with $1.9 billion in successful elections this past November. And so we have a strong track record in terms of, again, building public support for public projects. With me today is Marcia Sutter. I'll have Marcia introduce herself.
So I work under the moniker of Minding Your Business, and I provide project management, communication, and community engagement support for school districts like yours, nonprofits, and small businesses. And what I bring to our party here, so to speak, is a deep involvement with public education in the state of Illinois. I formerly held a position similar to Jill's at the Winnetka Public Schools, and since I left there about 4 years ago, I've worked with a number of school districts during the time just before they brought a project to the community, to work with them to refine the project, to understand the project, and to build support for that project. And that's so important if you think about if you do decide to go ahead and put this on a ballot. There's a community not too far north and east of here. They lost their referendum by 1 vote and had to go back again to the table. So all of the work and effort that they had done, and there's one that was on the ballot this last November that lost by less than 50 votes. So every one of these steps that Paul has talked about is so important because it's really important to engage with each and every person in your community. So I know that, Julia, you mentioned I live on the North Shore, and I am looking forward to working with all of you.
Not here tonight is Jim Hobart, and he's a vice president with Public Opinion Strategies. He might look familiar because you see him on CNN sometimes, and he is also often on National Public Radio. And Jim is our go-to pollster for tax-related referenda. So if you decide to do a public opinion poll, Jim would be the pollster that we recommend that you use. So tonight I want to talk about 4 steps that we think you should consider jumping through. First step is needs assessment. And usually I say this is doing your homework. And the reality is that you have already done a bunch of homework. But I think there are still some T's that need to be crossed in terms of circling back around, figuring out where you stand on the homework that's been done, get the cost of the project, revisit the financing plan, make sure that truly this would not be a tax rate increase in the event this was ever put on the ballot. So I think there's still some homework to be done. The second step is to take that homework and share it with the community. The third step is to get the community's reaction to the proposal. And then lastly, to make a decision whether you place this on the ballot or not. I'm assuming that's what you're thinking about. But again, it's all preliminary. There's a lot. It's amazing the number of cities and counties and school districts and others who don't go through these steps, and they decide, well, let's let's come up with our plan and just throw it on the ballot and let's hope it passes. And that's not what this is. This is about involving the taxpayer in the planning process well in advance of ever making a decision to place it on the ballot. So I'd like to go through the first phase in terms of needs assessment. And the very first thing we want to do would be a kickoff strategy with the group, primarily staff. You've done a great job of defining what you want to do, but at this meeting, I want to delve deeper into why you want to do it. So if you want to replace roofs, or you want to do a black box theater, or you want all these different things, I don't want to just know the what, but also I want to know the why. How does it benefit the student? How does it benefit the community? What does it cost? What's the tax impact, et cetera? Secondly, you've done all this homework in developing a master facility plan. My team would like to really go through that. Again, looking at the what's and the whys, and looking at the proposal that you're thinking about moving forward with. Thirdly, so I do a 3-hour workshop on election strategy and public policy. And part of that, I talk about developing a key influencer database. And the number of key influencers in the database is usually 2% times the number of likely voters. So it's, in your case, a fairly large number. And it includes business leaders, elected officials, civic leaders, religious leaders, major property taxpayers, which you shouldn't forget. It's people that have a voice in the community. And it's my understanding that Jill and her team has already started developing this database. And so we would help to maybe identify areas where you're missing additional people that might be included, et cetera. Next item is assembling supporting information. And I think the challenge that often school districts face is trying to do enough to explain to the community what their needs are, but not spending so much money on architects and construction managers, et cetera, that you're going overboard in trying to explain what you're trying to do. And so what I'm hoping is to take the supporting information that you've already developed and figure out, are there areas where maybe it needs a little more tweaking to what I call sizzle for the community. We would conduct a voter analysis. And the reason we do that is that eventually we want to poll likely voters. So we don't want to poll every registered voter. We don't want to poll every household. We want to poll likely voters to determine whether you have a chance or not of this particular proposal garnering support if it were to be on the ballot. And so that's why we do the voter analysis. We would help you with your core argument. It's basically what's the problem, what's the solution, what's the cost, and why is it urgent? It's kind of like a Tide commercial. Again, I think it's super important to really, the first question when you go into the coffee shop and you say, we're thinking about doing these building improvements. And they'll say, well, how are you going to pay for it? And then they say, what's it cost? And what's the tax impact? What's it cost me? And tell me line by line, what are these various costs? So you're talking about improvements to you name it, the press box. What's that cost? I mean, these costs have to be very detailed. You have to have those answers. We recommend that you meet with your top key influencers. So it doesn't matter if we're talking city of Chicago or we're talking a very small suburb. There's always a group of folks, maybe 5 to 10, who I would consider your ultimate key influencers. We got to figure out who they are. They might be elected officials, religious leaders, et cetera. We've got to figure out who they are, and then we need to share that proposal with them to get their feedback right away, to determine, are we headed in the right direction? Is this crazy thinking about moving forward with these kind of improvements, or does this make sense? I know that you already put together quite a few citizens who participated in defining what your needs should be. And then you whittled down that proposal. You had not a big wish list, but you had your high priority needs, but then that group came in, prioritized, whittled it down further. Now I'm saying you need to do one more thing like that. And what it is a group of 25 to 35, again, business leaders, major property taxpayers, civic leaders, others who will vet that proposal. And I just finished doing that with District 30. And that's Northbrook. And a very great exercise, and I've done it numerous times. New Trier went through this same process. And it's basically 70% friendlies and 30% not so friendly, right? So I don't want to load it up with a rubber stamp of folks who are just going to say, okay, this looks great. These folks, there have to be people on this committee that are going to challenge you as a district about these costs and the projects, et cetera, so that if you eventually put this on the ballot, it has a fighting chance. And then the task force, I say defines. I would say you've already really defined your proposal. They would vet the proposal to further refine what you've already come up with. And then the next step would be the public information program, and Marcia will talk a little bit about that.
Do you click for me?
Sure.
So we'll start that with staff outreach meetings. The staff are on the front lines. They're meeting with parents. Many of them live here in your community, so you really want them to be able to answer questions about this proposal and feel like they have a stake in the game. They're really your ambassadors for this project. And then we'll take a look at the website, which you guys are in great shape on your website, but we'll add a link to a page that is specific to this project. Help Jill with making sure that this is embedded in the electronic communication that you're getting out. And this is often a place, I know you guys have talked about that fewer people are reading your newspapers and more are turning to electronic media, but the media also will go here to get information, and it's important to remember that while parents are getting information that way, you have a lot of other community members who may not be. So that will serve many purposes, and we'll work with you to update it throughout the program. We'll move on to a letter with an attachment to your key influencers, and that'll be an executive summary of the master plan. It will include some more visuals, and that will go out to that group. I think we said it was about 1,000 people. A similar letter will go out to all households in your district. After talking to the staff, we know that you really want to make sure that you touch everyone in your community. So that will be a similar letter, but the attachment will be briefer. That will save on costs. It'll have some infographics and kind of sound bites to sort of kick this process off and begin that community education process.
The purpose of the attachment is to show that you did your homework. So the first mailer that went out to key influencers is a little thicker in terms of the attachment because it's showing more of the homework. Will they all read it? No. But it does show that you've taken made the effort to really cross all your T's.
Right, you guys have done years of work to get ready for this. We want everyone to know that you put all that work into it, but not share every single detail. And then we'll move on to outreach meetings and tours, where you'll invite people into both school buildings so that they can see what the needs are at each building. We'll work with you to develop a video, because we're assuming most people will only go into one building, and you want them to see the needs at both buildings. So that will include a presentation, a tour, a video, and then some kind of a feedback component, likely facilitated table discussions. We'll develop a discussion guide. We'll do a train the trainer, and the same questions and information will be collected at each table. So you'll get an aggregate of the people who cared enough to attend the meetings. That will typically be parents and people who are often in opposition to your plan. So that information would be qualitative, not necessarily representative of the full community, but it will give you a lot of information to move forward and build some additional ambassadors for your plans. But because we know not everybody will come to the schools, we will also go out with presentations. Typically, we think that the superintendent, although you may appoint some ambassadors, would be the best person to deliver those. You're in your first year here, so that's also a great way for you to get out into the community. And we always say it's great if you will go to anyone who will listen. So that would be parents of younger students, realtors, any community events, civic groups, Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, and local elected officials, your park board and any other boards. And then we would move on to earned media. Again, we talked briefly about the fact that readership seems to be going down, but we know it's important not to ignore those outlets, especially to publicize your meetings. It will help you save money, fewer mailers, if we take advantage of that. We'll do an FAQ letter to all households. That'll be the second mailing that they'll be getting. Again, infographics, bite-sized text. We can already anticipate, as I'm sure you can, what some of those FAQs will be, but other ones may bubble up from those facilitated community table meetings, and so we'll want to be sure that we reflect what we learned at those meetings. And then we'll move on to social media. This, of course, will sort of be bubbling along the whole time that 1 through 8 are. And you guys already have a very robust social media program, so we'll primarily work with you on content, on scheduling for those channels, and then if any new opportunities, things are always changing, as Jill knows well, in that arena. So we will help you evaluate any of those and see if any of them would be useful for this.
So, step 1, you did your homework. Step 2, you're sharing it with the community. And then step 3, you're asking the community, what do you think? Most importantly, would you pay for this? And so you do public meetings, and typically, nobody's at the public meeting, right? I mean, it's pretty slim pickings.
It's a big crowd tonight.
But imagine if you could fill the room with 8 to 17% of your electorate, and they each get 30 seconds to come up to the mic and say what they do or don't like about the district, what they do or don't like about this proposal. I mean, that would be great public policy. And that's what a mail survey is. The mail survey goes to every, in this case, not just every registered voter household. This would go to every household, would be the goal. And it would be half information, half questions. Some of the questions would be open-ended, like, what, if anything, don't you like about this proposal? And you will get back, I promise you, because I've done it hundreds of times, typewritten letters telling you all the things they love about the district or hate about the district or love about the proposal or don't like about the proposal. And again, I think that's great public policy. I'd rather hear that now than 2 weeks before Election Day or on Election Day. The mail survey, which I was just talking about, is not scientific. Sometimes it's the only option you have with regard to a tool in trying to get public opinion research back. But you have enough voters that you could do a phone poll, a scientific phone poll. And the key to the scientific phone poll is that we would so first let me back up. You need to make a decision. Do you think that in the future you would go during March 2018, or would you go November 2018? And the reason that it matters, and we'll do a voter analysis so you can look at the data and I'll explain to you what I see. It matters because when we do a poll, we need to only poll, again, those likely voters.
For each
and there's a
election,
big difference
right.
between who's going to show up to a march
For sure.
and who's going to show up to a gubernatorial. And so we'll have to know that in advance. And ideally, we do a random stratified sample of 400 voters to exactly match the demographics of that likely voter universe. And typically, here's how it works. So we ask a few warm-up questions, then we ask the actual ballot question. Some pollsters will do a summary of the ballot question, like a really small summary, and we don't. Or I say we, Public Opinion Strategies, the pollster would not. They would try to exactly mimic what that person is going to read at the ballot box, which I think makes sense. And then we test parts of it. So let's say that part of these improvements were, we test what's north and it's south and outside the building and inside the building, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to figure out, is there a red herring that's in this proposal that people don't like? Then we're going to test arguments for and against the measure. And we're trying to mimic what you're going to hear in a coffee shop or recreating what you would hear during a campaign. And then we're going to do tax sensitivity questions. And then we're going to ask the ballot question again after they've had time to digest all these pros and cons and parts of the package, et cetera. They're probably going to hear more than they'll ever hear, right, about this package that anybody's ever going to hear. But then they get to sound off whether they would vote yes or no. And then we ask them demographic questions at the end so that we can do what are called crosstabs So for example, what did seniors think about this? What did 18 to 24-year-olds think? What did senior Democrats think? We have all sorts of great information that we can share. So why do we poll? Well, we can test voter attitudes and opinions. We can test support not just for the proposal, but for the public entity. So one of the questions that we asked, and we just did this with District 30, is grade the district. District 30 just got the highest grade I've seen of any of the mail surveys I've done in 24 years. Even higher than New Trier. So that was pretty exciting for them.
Yeah.
And the reason it matters is the higher that grade, there's a positive correlation with the yes vote. And the lower that grade, the more likely they're going to vote no. So it does matter. We do some questions that are tax sensitivity questions, trying to figure out a sweet spot. I mean, the nice thing is that if you could potentially structure a financing such that you have debt rolling off, which you do, and this can be not a tax rate increase, it's really powerful. And I know that's why you're thinking right now, well, maybe this is the time, not just because it's urgent in terms of the needs of the facilities, but it's urgent because you have debt rolling off. The poll can help with identifying convincing messages. And then lastly, 30% of your electorate is always going to vote no. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be an orphanage, they're going to vote no. 30%, you could put anything on the ballot and they're going to vote yes. And then those people in the middle that they're not sure and they're on the fence, those are those swing voters. And this poll is going to help us figure out who are those swing voters. Who is it that we're missing in terms of when we're trying to communicate? And it'll help us as we circle back around as a district to then do further communications to make sure we're covering all the messages that we need to message, and also answering all the questions that we need to answer. Lastly, I talked about that task force coming together, 25 to 35 members, not all friendly, not a rubber stamp of the district. They're truly going to vet this proposal. They get access to the mail survey results, which I, again, just did this on Thursday at District 30, and they get access to the phone poll results. And then they get to make a recommendation to the board. So it's almost like you're supersizing the board. It's like it's helping take the pressure off a little bit of the board, because now you have all these community leaders, and including major property taxpayers, those who are going to pay the most when it comes to a tax, helping you think about, should this be on the ballot and what form should it take? And then lastly, they make a recommendation to the board. The recommendation might be, you know what, you shouldn't put this on the ballot, right? I mean, the poll results might come back as a real clunker and say this should not be on the ballot. And they might recommend that. I've seen that before. Hinsdale 86 just did that. They went through this process and the board said, no, don't put this on the ballot. And so they had to, so they didn't. Or I'm sorry, the task force said put it on the ballot. The board decided not to put it on the ballot. So, but there are task forces that have come back and said, don't put this on the ballot. So was all that work for naught is a big question. And I don't think it is, because you have spent a long time educating the voter about your facility needs. You've also spent a long time building trust with the community. Taxpayers love it when you involve them in this planning process. I'd just say the last item is, you did this public information program, you did mail survey, you did a phone poll, now these people are like, what are they going to do? Well, you have to send a mailer out again and say, hey, here's what you said, we listened, here's what we're thinking about doing.
Right.
And then you have then you make the decision of adopting the question or not. Do you raise your hand and say, yeah, let's move forward, or yeah, let's move forward, but let's modify this package, or wow, let's not move forward, this is not the right time. I'm sorry, I cut you off. You were gonna.
No, I was just gonna say that if in the event you decide either to finance in a different way or to hold off on putting something on the ballot, you've really built a structure there. You've built a framework. You've started to just get a dialogue going with your community, and that's going to serve you well, not just for capital projects, but if you need to do an operating referendum or if any other issues bubble up in the district. You just want to have that dialogue going. So I don't think you should ever feel that if you decide to hold off on this capital improvement, that was not a well-thought time and expenditure.
Definitely. In 2010, New Trier tried to pass a bond measure that had 35% support.
That
Okay,
didn't
so
work out
it
very well
went down
at
in
all.
flames.
Yeah.
That was a tree.
In 2014, they went through this process, and they got 65% support. So we know that this works. Joliet Park District just went through this process, 70% support. Brookwood School District, it's a tough district to try and pass a tax, 68% support. So there weren't just wins; these were kind of big wins, which I think school districts need. It's not to say that they all pass by huge margins. We just worked with LaSalle Peru High School District. It passed by like 60 votes. But the reason it passed is they started out at 90, then they cut it to 60. Then we did the polling in the mail survey that told them they should do 38 million. They put it on the ballot for 38 million and it passed by 60 votes. So
Even at
that
that.
shows the power of the science behind doing the phone poll.
And engaging with all of your community members over an extended period of time to answer those questions and build that trust.
Definitely. So with that, we will open it up to questions.
You don't want to tell them why we're the ideal
Oh,
partner?
jeez.
You've got one more slide.
Sure, sorry.
Because it was my turn
Okay,
to talk.
sorry, go.
Well, we obviously have a winning game plan, built long-term trust. We've talked about that. No greenhorns assigned. You've got Paul and me here, and Jim will be with you when you're doing the polling. We can hit the ground running. The November 2016 election cycle is behind us. We've gotten a few good nights' sleep. We are ready to go again. And we're very flexible and responsive. I think you've probably talked to somebody who worked with us who can attest to that.
And then lastly, the big thing is that, so let's say we jump through all these hoops, we do the phone poll, the polling comes back and the taxpayer says, you know what, we would likely support this, especially if there's not a tax rate increase. We would support this. Then we don't just leave. Then if a committee comes together of concerned citizens who would like to advocate for the measure, my team is here to help. And it's exactly what we did with LaSalle. We did it with New Trier and all those others who you see on the board recently. We don't disappear. The other thing is that it's pro bono. So our work, I am required to track all of our hours, and at the end, we provide an in-kind contribution letter to the committee. That's how that would work.
I wonder how that worked.
So we have found that committees, citizens committees, have a difficult time trying to raise funds to buy yard signs and do door hangers and do mailers, et cetera. And if you have if they're having to pay for a high-priced consultant, on top of that, then all of a sudden all the yard signs and the door hangers and everything else goes bye-bye. So that's why we made the commitment that we would do that pro bono. So with that, now any questions? Sorry.
I have a question about, it's an obvious one about the phone poll, since it's so hard to reach people. Do you use landlines? Do you use cell phones?
We do both now. In fact, if you didn't, so we purchase cell phones, and if you didn't purchase those numbers and you just did landlines, it would likely be skewed older.
Yeah, exactly.
So
right.
we definitely need to.
And I wondered how easy it is to purchase cell phone numbers.
Yes. So definitely Public Opinion Strategies purchases cell phones, not just to do the required number of completed calls, but
to
also
get
because they're never going to
the
get
demographics.
that stratified random stratified sample to exactly match the demographics of that likely voter universe. Great question. Any other questions?
And this would, I'm sorry, another question. This would start like now?
This would start immediately with probably a kickoff meeting.
probably in January for a
in
kickoff.
January, to discuss.
Let the holidays go.
Yes.
Well, we only have a couple of weeks left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
What I'm most excited about is do the voter analysis to figure out
Yeah.
what do the demographics look like for a March election versus November
Right.
2018 election.
We can tell you it's usually a much lower turnout in March.
Absolutely.
That's something.
I don't think you touched upon actually the board's role in this process.
Sure.
I didn't hear much about that.
Okay.
If you could touch on that.
So when it comes to the task force meetings, I always get this question, should the board members sit on the task force? While I don't think they should sit on the task force, I do think, what I do have them do is have typically 2 board members show up for each task force meeting. One to start the meeting and one to end the meeting. Properly respecting those persons who are lending their time to this process and thanking them. And the other thing is we just keep you updated as the process goes. Any input that you want to provide in terms of moving forward with the public information program, or during if you say we would really like to see the questions of the phone poll before they go out, happy to do that. There's plenty of boards that want to see the questions before it's put into the field. Same with the mail survey. And we're happy to do that. So again, it's
And during the community engagement meetings, the ones that are held at each school, we really encourage the school board members to be there interacting with people. You're able to answer questions that not everybody has the breadth of knowledge that you do. And again, it's a great way for you to touch base with your constituents. So we encourage you to be there for those as well. And you'll see, of course, all the materials and supporting evidence that is developed before it's shared. We'll work with the administrative team to make sure that that's handled in the fashion that you guys usually handle things.
I also think it's critical that the board be unified if in the event you ever decide to put something on the ballot. Because if it's not, then that's usually not a good thing.
That's right.
So I'm hoping that we involve you enough that at the end, you say, you're unified in terms of your decision. Whether it's no, yes, no, or somewhere in between.
How many times have you gone through this whole process, seen recommendation for the measure to go forward, and have it fail?
We have an 86% track record, and most of the time when I say don't put it on the ballot, they don't. However, I say that during this last election cycle, I had 3 clients who I said, you need to radically modify the package or maybe not pursue this, and that was not heeded and they lost.
So I'm talking about all of your advice being followed, all the indicators saying this is going to work, and then have it not work. Is that your 86% number, or is it actually higher than that?
Our win rate, if I didn't have all the folks who decided to put it on the ballot anyways, the number is more like 90%. So there's this small number that typically they listen to what I say at the end. Actually, not me. They listen to what the taxpayer says at the end, right? What did the taxpayer say in the mail survey and the phone poll? That's what matters.
Yeah.
And most boards are savvy enough to listen to that and to the task force recommendation.
You were just saying that you had 3 clients this last.
Yeah, I'm not gonna publicly disclose who they are, but
No,
I'd be happy.
no, that's not what I'm asking. Is let's say we go for spring of 18.
Okay.
How many clients will you have at that time? Or do you have a maximum or a minimum?
There's not a maximum or minimum, but I can tell you that typically high voter turnout is a good thing. Okay? So we just had a presidential election, and that's when the mother load hits. That's when you have the highest turnout. And so that's when that's when we as a team are absolutely the busiest. So we just went through the busiest season. And so now it cools off a little bit. Is it to say that we're not going to have a bunch of clients? No, because we're really good at what we do.
Okay. I'm just saying, is that going to spread you too thin?
No.
If you have, let's say, 4 or 5 clients at a time versus
Right.
1 or 2.
Right. Now, I don't think it'll spread us thin, and you're going to get me. You're not going to get a greenhorn. So when I'll show up, right?
We'll be here.
You're not going to get the junior, all of a sudden I make the pitch and then the junior person shows up, which I've seen other consultants do. We don't do that. So you're a high profile.
I've had that happen in the past, years ago, and it didn't work too well.
It will not happen with our team.
What about situations where you have other taxing bodies thinking about bringing forward measures of their own at the same time that we're looking at?
If it's competing, I wouldn't represent them. So
Are
if
you
you're
talking about in your community?
Yeah,
Yes,
I would
in our
not
community.
represent them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where I was
Yeah,
getting,
that's a lot.
what I was getting at actually was,
Chances.
how do we identify
Yep.
where is that somewhere in step 2 where
So I have another timeline that's way more detailed.
okay.
It has about 101 steps. And the very first thing that you're going to do as a board and as a district staff is to go out and talk to other public entities to figure out if they're going to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
And not negotiate, but at least have the courtesy of saying, hey, we're thinking maybe March of 2018, maybe November 2018. What are you guys thinking about? That's super important right off the bat. It's the very first line item.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah.
Very good question. You don't want competing tax measures. However, you are the 8,000-pound gorilla. So
Good to know.
Really, other than a city, because when it comes to road projects or water and sewer, they're the only ones that have more power than the school district in terms of putting something on the ballot. So if it's community college, fire district, park district, God forbid they're doing a jail, that'll never pass. You typically have more oomph than those other public entities, other than a municipality that's looking for a road or sewer infrastructure project.
And they'll have the same question that you do, so by getting out there in step 1 or 2 of step 101, they may rethink their timelines as well, because you've done that courtesy call and said, this is what we're thinking of, and they may be like, we might be able to wait a year on this.
Well, and rightly so. I mean,
Yeah.
the taxpayers can only handle so much.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Have you ever been on the ballot with another measure like that, and that you recall, or do you?
There have been instances where we're competing. Oh, definitely, almost all of them that were on the ballot this past
I
election
bet,
cycle.
in the
There were
general.
lots of people trying to, and also also ballot measures that maybe at first blush you thought, wow, I wish that wasn't on the ballot. For example, a minimum wage measure, for example, that works to your benefit, right? Because you have younger voters showing up to vote for the minimum wage. A marijuana issue, younger voters showing up to, right? And we saw that this last election cycle.
Right.
So each is unique in terms of whether it's a positive or negative.
Could you expound upon going from in your example, 90 to 60 to 30 million?
Sure.
If you've watched our meetings, you've seen that we're at a stage where we're trying to identify what the community will support as far as number. A number's important, but it's not just a number, it's also what we're going to use with those numbers. We're trying to identify through the master facility plan what will be supported from the community. Maybe the biggest ticket item is the auditorium renovation here at South High School. Can you address and expound upon that process and fill us in more?
Definitely. So I'll use LaSalle Peru as an example. So they started out with 90 million. They wanted to do improvements to their historic high school, and they wanted to build a STEM facility on the existing high school, and then they wanted to make improvements to voc ed. So that was the 90 million. It had all sorts of bells and whistles. So at the very first board meeting when they interviewed me, they said, we're thinking about 90 million. And I said, well, that's great. And then I said, what's the tax impact? And they indicated a really large tax impact. And I said, well, that's the highest tax impact I've ever heard in 24 years. So then I said, you might want to think about a plan B where you're truly looking at no bells and whistles, and it's your absolute highest priority needs. And so they came back the next time at 60 some odd million. And I said, well, let's run the numbers. What's the tax impact? And I said, that tax impact for this particular community is still really big.
Oh, boy.
And so I said, here's what we'll do. We'll do when we do the phone poll, we'll split the sample. And we'll test the 60 million, and then we'll test, you tell me, you give me your where you're about to cry that you have to go with this size bond measure, but it's still going to meet most of your needs, or many of your needs. And that's how they came up with 38 million. They scrapped the STEM lab for that as part of that 38 million. So then we split the sample, we tested it, and the 60 million was not going to be supported, and the 38 million, I think, pulled at 55% on the first read of the question. And there's a 5% margin of error.
Here you go.
And I said, you have a fighting chance of potentially passing the 38 million. The other one's going to get crushed. And so they scrapped the STEM stuff. They scrapped the voc ed improvements, and they focused on health, life safety, classroom improvements. They added furniture, things like that. But still, it's going to make a huge difference for many students for years to come as a result of making these improvements. And there is no way they would have gone with the 90 million had they not. Right away, they would have put the 90 million. It would have gotten crushed. Even during a presidential, when you have high turnout, right, favorable electorate, as favorable as you could possibly get. So that was the process. So my recommendation to you would be, look at your list and figure out, is there anything on that list that you think is a want? Because if it is, then I'd get rid of it. If it's not truly a need, I would not include it. That's how you respect the taxpayer. That's how you build public support for a project.
Which is why we've talked about it in this. We've gone through a lot of that process.
Done quite a bit of it
Done a lot of
already.
that homework as a
Yes.
team over the last 2-3 years.
Right.
So we're at the point where we need to go out and find out, does that reflect the community's vision?
Exactly.
Can you explain your relationship with our architects?
Sure.
And how that goes throughout
So
the process?
I don't have a relationship with them, but we do work with the architect. And for example, during we worked with, is it White and Company?
White.
So White and Company was involved with New Trier. And so whenever we needed something where we said, okay, we're going to do a newsletter and we want to show how we're getting a lot of questions about how is this project going to be phased in, because they were worried about the impact on the student. And so White and Company came up with this really cool illustration of how this project was going to be phased in, and totally eliminate a lot of the concerns with parents and others about that. So a lot of times I'll be communicating with them if there's certain sizzle that I need to illustrate for the voter what they're going to get for their monies. Or is there a particular issue at hand that we need to address, like phasing in the project? I don't know if you have a, so then they're serving as the construction manager as well, I believe.
Correct.
Correct, okay. So that's the other thing, is they need to make sure those numbers are tight. And then you're working with, I assume you have a financial advisor or underwriter, and we're seeing right now interest rates rising. So that's why we need to update the financing plan. We have to circle back around that, interest rates are going to be up 80 basis points from just, 2 weeks ago. So now we need to look at the financing plan again, figure out what is that tax impact and how does it impact the total request.
Can you speak to your successes as far as getting community engagement involved? We can talk about the schools and we can talk about doing those things, but actually getting people to come out and do that.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that regard as to?
Let Marcia talk on that.
Sure, so that's, there's a couple parts to that. So it's getting the word out to your parents. Typically, you'd be publicizing that in your mailings. I've had meetings where it's standing room only. Like, we anticipated that we would have 16 tables set up, and we put 4 more in. We ask for RSVPs, usually do a Google Doc so we can help you anticipate those needs, make sure you have enough trainers, and it's a question of using all the tools in your community's arsenal. So obviously your electronic newsletters, reaching out to parents of kids in your K through 8 feeder schools is very, very important to this process, even reaching down to the preschool. So it's really just getting out there, developing a list, figuring out where the people are, and then inviting them. And it's why it's so important to have things like video, things on your website to really draw them in. A lot of school districts have success by teaming that up with something else. Maybe you do a meeting on the same day as an important football game or some other event at the school. So we would work with Jill and the rest of the administrative team to really identify those dates. But it's definitely much more than just putting it in a print newsletter. Posters will help you develop an identity for this project, so when people see a poster, a postcard, or an email,
See it.
they'll instantly associate it with this project. So.
We also do things like robocalls because we know how much people love robocalls. But it's the truth. When we do a robocall, as long as it's not during a presidential election,
is
we can
better.
get people to actually show up to meetings. So 70% of your electorate don't have kids under the age of 19. So we can pack this room full of parents, which is fine, but we also try to help you think about strategies to get that non-parent, at least the non-parent with regard to a kid under the age of 19, in that room. It's really difficult to do, though.
Right. And it's why we also recommend not just hosting meetings at your school, but having a presentation ready to go at other community meetings and events. So you can get 10 or 15 minutes of their time, introduce the project. Depending on where we are in the timeline, that might entice them to come to a tour, but you'll have a video tour that will be on that webpage. So it's also just another invitation to them to come and view your materials and learn about the project.
It's difficult, though. I wouldn't, I wouldn't sugarcoat that it's, and easy to try and get a lot of people in the room.
No doubt. With regard to fees, we're not going to talk specifically about fees tonight, but is, the proposal you put together here tonight and your 101 steps, is if we decide not to do a video or if we decide we don't want to do certain robocalls or certain polling, is your fee all inclusive or is it a la carte? How do you charge?
So I charge a flat fee. It does not include hard costs. So you're responsible for paying for the phone pole. You're responsible for print and postage. For example, any mailers that go out, the mail survey would require print and postage. Marcia charges on an hourly basis. And so she would have a separate contract with the district. So you really would have 3 separate contracts. George K. Bauman Company's contract, Marcia's contract, and then the pollster's contract.
Okay.
If you told us, we don't want to use that pollster, that's fine. I can give you I can give you Illinois pollsters, that whatever. But we want to get a really good pollster to do this work. So if you wanted to shop that around, fine, but we like the person that we typically use.
Okay.
Do we have a ballpark number, like the most expensive, like if we get all of you and all of the bells and whistles, what's the ballpark of that?
$95,000.
Okay. That's what I thought. I couldn't
That'll
quite
be
remember.
probably spread out over 2 school years, if I understand the timeline and your budget cycle correctly.
And we'll bring contract in the next.
The next meeting.
We didn't want to mingle the two. We want to make sure you're comfortable.
It's really comprehensive, for sure.
So a couple of things I just want to speak to from the administrative side, why we're recommending them and bringing them forward. I know we've spent a lot of time talking about ballots and voting and those kinds of things, because that's closely tied to a master facilities project. One of the things that both Jill and I and the rest of the team were really impressed by with this group and look forward to and working with them hopefully is the groundwork that we're laying for any other future community engagement or communication that we need to do going forward. I know that that's a major goal of this board. Independent of anything that happens with the master facilities project, I feel like the work that this group offers us is the ability to really programmatically build out communication structures so that, let's say we decide, no, we went out, we talked to some people, we've decided this isn't the direction we want to go in, the community isn't interested in this right now, that we will not have wasted our money that we've invested in this project, because we built out these databases and these lines of communication, this community outreach, that for whatever comes next, it's not thrown away. Where with some of the groups we looked at, we felt like that's what it would be. Like we were building for a single item project, not a larger community engagement structure. And we feel like this team offers us that opportunity. Jill, or anybody else that was on the team, anything else on this?
Well, it was a whole group of us that listened to this team and then another team, and it was clear that you would be a good fit, I think, with us, and very methodical process that they suggest, and had a lot of success, obviously, so there's a lot to learn from them. Future engagement too, I think.
I just have one more question. Just curious, you did talk about higher likelihood of success when we're really replacing former debt service that's falling off our rolls. Can you speak to the percentage of likelihood of success?
It's rare that they ever fail.
Really?
Yeah, it's almost as if, so it's when you have not a tax rate increase. So when I ever see competitors that are doing a measure, and even if it's hundreds of millions of dollars, I always say, I wonder if that was a tax rate increase. And they say, oh, no, it wasn't a tax rate increase. And they go, oh, well, of course it passed. It's similar to school districts that get grants, that are matching grants. Even if it was small, that you can play off of, that grant is available, but only for a set period of time, and it requires a vote of the people for that matching grant. Really powerful. But I'd say that even more powerful than those matching grants is debt rolling off, where you can go to a taxpayer and say, now the reality is, it is a tax increase, right? This debt's rolling off.
Yes.
Their taxes would go down if it rolled off, right?
It's a reinvestment.
And they need to understand that.
Absolutely. You're trying to maintain, you're trying to extend the useful life of these facilities. You're trying to reduce critical emergency expenses that are super expensive. You're trying to improve energy efficiency, saving taxpayer dollars, and it's an investment in these facilities for the long term. So, and it's not going to raise your taxes, which is not going to raise your tax rate. It's not a tax rate increase.
Right.
You always have to be careful about that, because there's a lot of voters who'll say, well, that's not true. It is a tax increase. You have to be clear that it's not a tax rate increase. Super important.
That's why all that survey work is so important.
Absolutely.
Test that messaging.
And what the board has asked for is to gather information enough so that you know what your next step should be.
Exactly.
And as an administrative team, we believe that you need to really truly do these 4 steps to answer that question. Even before we brought them in and we were brainstorming as a team, this is kind of the structure that we had in mind, is we wanted a partner that would bring this kind of structure forward. This is the work that it takes to do those 2 things that we want to do. A, find out if we should go to our community and ask for this, and B, to build the long-term structures to continue these kinds of communications with our community. So that's why they're here.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions before we set them free?
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you.
And you two are welcome to stick around for the remainder of the
It's
meeting.
exciting.
Although
Yeah.
you may leave as well.
I'm going to watch it on video.
Oh, okay.
Because it's so riveting.
It's curriculum. It is important.
We'll let you.
Well, we find it interesting.
That's right. Same
Okay,
thing
but
as we do.
we recognize that other people don't find it quite as interesting.
And I'm assuming Gina will be doing this next one?
Yes,
Which
so-
is the curriculum proposals?
Yes, we have 6 curriculum proposals that are going to come forward. Gina with our cast of
Crew.
chairs.
One of them's going to affect my daughter.
We'll talk
My
about
daughter
each
will
of
sign
them.
up for
I'm gonna
these
turn it
classes
over to
next
her to
year.
run them.
I know.
Thank you, Dr. Keeley.
She's hoping.
So as Dr. Keeley said,
Really?
we have 6 proposals this year, so this is an all-time high. Very excited about that. 3 different departments.
Yeah.
And just a couple of things that I want to share with the board, which is a repeat for those of you that have been with us for course proposals before, but I think is important to point out. These course proposals have been vetted with several different groups before coming here.
Right.
These courses really start, some of them a couple of years ago. with thinking about what are the needs of our students, with surveying students to find out what they're interested in, with talking to students who've taken various courses, so on and so forth. And these courses oftentimes come from students, student interest, oftentimes from teachers that have taught these courses, and they come through the departments. And so that's very important to point out. These aren't necessarily courses that we decide in November that we're going to bring forward in December. Okay? So they've gone through several different processes. Department chairs have had opportunities to look at the courses and provide feedback. Parents have been involved in giving feedback. Our administrators, both building and district. So there's a long process that starts, for the most part, the spring before, when we actually start working on the proposal and getting all the details. And there's steps that come after this. Obviously, if the board decides to approve the proposals, there are steps in terms of curriculum writing, further curriculum writing, I should say, possible textbook proposals, those kinds of things. But there is a long process. These 6 courses that we're looking at, we're looking at for next school year, so to offer next year. And again, they've been through a long process, and this is kind of the final leg in that journey. So we're going to start with PE, and I am really excited about PE. And I'm excited for lots of different reasons. And when you see the courses, you'll understand why. But what I want to share about that is we've done a couple of different looks at PE in the last 23 years. So we've done some organizational things, we've combined some courses, we've changed some content in courses, but this is the first time, and I could only find research for 23 years, that we are proposing a course within the current structure of the department. So these are 2 brand new courses. 2 courses that are not necessarily taught. There might be different parts of them, don't get me wrong, but as courses, these are new courses bringing to the board. And I think that's really exciting. Our department chairs, our teachers, our PE teachers have worked really hard on this. And so the first time that definitely these 2 department chairs have been in front of us, but it's been a long time. And so very excited to have Scott Lange, who is our department chair from South High School, and Courtney White, who's our department chair from North High School, and they're going to talk to you today about these 2 courses. So we'll have them give an intro to the courses, we'll take some questions, and then we'll let them leave for the evening, and then we'll bring up our CTE chairs, our English chairs, and so on.
So if you have questions, we've told our chairs that as they present, they can take off for the evening, so make sure you get them in before we send them through.
Got it.
Good evening, everyone. The course that I'm going to be talking about is called Personal Safety and Wellness. It is a junior-senior elective, and like all of our junior-senior electives, it will earn half credit, and the prerequisite is PE1 and PE2. All right. Now, basically what this course focuses on is how to avoid violent and unsafe situations. It is going to be using a nationally recognized program called RAD that's going to talk about rape and aggression prevention programs. So the main point is going to be a classroom structure where they're going to be talking about how to avoid these violent situations and unsafe situations. Then there's also going to be work done where they're going to learn how to actually defend themselves if they're ever in one of those situations. And then finally, there's also a fitness component and a fitness piece that will go along with it that will help them obviously become mentally and physically stronger if they are put in these situations. So that's kind of the way the course is going to work out. Brief overview.
The second course is a personal trainer certification course. The exciting thing about this course is that it gives the students an opportunity to have a job skill when they walk out of the building, whether at North or South. And again, same as all the other courses, it earns half a credit. You have to get P1, P2 passed successfully, and it's offered to junior and seniors. It's highly recommended that students take the Fitness 1 course first, because a lot of the concepts that we discuss in this class is taught in the Fitness 1 course as well. The good thing about this course is, I don't know if you've heard of the American Council on Exercise, also called known as ACE. That is the company that we're working with. They're a nonprofit organization. They're giving us their curriculum and their information free of charge. We are basically going to have to buy the materials, and we wanted to do a class set for the materials to make it because it'd be cost prohibitive for the students if we asked them to buy that. It'd be a little bit expensive. On top of that, we'll go ahead and just put them through the ACE program, which talks about how to work with clients, how to assess clients and their needs, how to work with their needs, and then move forward from there. Generally, our physical education programs work with students in their own personal health, so they kind of know where they are and they kind of know what they need, so they can move forward with that. We're taking that same information and telling them, hey, now you have to work with somebody else who may be a complete novice in exercise, or somebody who is pretty well versed in exercise, and now where do you take them? And when they use the ACE Integrated Fitness Training module that ACE has put out to be able to do that. A lot of it is really psychology, and it helps you figure out where your client is as far as self-efficacy and behavior change, and facilitating that relationship, that trust, to help somebody make the gains that they want to make.
Okay,
So those are the two.
those are the 2 PE courses. So if you have questions?
So, a question I probably have for everybody presenting tonight is, I'm always concerned when we add new classes, what's the impact on existing? I've asked this question in the past too. So, what's the fallout? Are there other classes that are likely to get cut because the kids are choosing this instead? And how do you see this interweaving with the other classes you have in your departments? Impact.
Well, I can. So we've already made some modifications to classes by combining classes in, like at the South Campus. We've taken 2 courses that were standalone and kind of combined them because we thought each one of them may get hit by some of these courses. So by combining it, that way kids still have options.
Good.
So that's one way. But as far as the other class, like the class you were talking about,
We don't see a huge impact on the other classes that we have. What we're really trying to do is make sure kids get into the classes that they want to get into.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than having a kid in the class who, I
Right.
didn't sign up for this. So these are classes, at least the one specifically for personal training certification, is going to look for a certain type of student, one that's probably going to go into some kind of health-related field as they leave high school. And right now, we don't offer a course that really challenges them in that aspect. So I think we'll probably pull some kids from some other courses, but those courses by no means would die.
No.
As a result of these courses coming through.
No, neither one of them.
Do you have an estimate on how many kids are, I know you did a student interest survey.
Yeah, the interesting thing was the personal training certification course is what we wanted to go through. When we did our student survey, we realized the personal safety and wellness was by far
Huge.
more important. We were like, well, we got to get this thing moving.
Big interest.
So
Not surprised,
we're really targeting certain types of kids for these courses, and we're working with our staff and our counselors to make sure the right kids get into the courses that they want, because we really want to make these things successful and make sure the students are learning the information as well.
Are you finding the personal training and wellness one is geared more toward the female?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lack of a better way to say it.
Yeah, I think
No, the
that'll
personal
be-
safety you meant.
Personal safety.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you'll probably see
Sure.
more females enroll in that course. Absolutely.
Where the other one is more 50-50?
Yeah.
I taught the personal trainer certification course in my last school. I did it as a pilot, and it went well. It is a classroom-based course where we have, I call it a lab portion, where the physical portion is where we apply concepts that we learn. The kids grasped onto it. I think maybe 10% of them took it so they can get out of activity, if you will. The rest of them were there to learn the information, actually take the certification exam, of which I think 10% passed. I left, so I'm not quite sure how many else took it the first time, or took it a second time. But 10% did pass the exam when they decided to take it.
So your comment about the personal safety and wellness class being probably most, something that the ladies would be more interested in. So that might be something we might need to try to work against a little bit. I mean, I would hate for guys who might look at this and say, hey, this is a class that I really like to do, but then you hear, the talk is that it's a girls' class. I mean, we wouldn't want that to happen.
No.
So anyhow, just perceptions become.
And it seems like in this climate,
I get it.
It's very important for the girls.
Hey, I've got 3 daughters, so
And we do have other courses currently on the books right now that kind of have that same type of thing. Dance techniques all of a sudden automatically is assumed, oh, well, that's only for females.
I get it.
Advanced team sports, well, that's only guys. So we kind of try to fight that every year.
You're working at
That's
it.
we already have on the book, so.
Got it.
So we try to balance
Yeah,
it.
we try to balance it all.
Not a new issue.
Really interesting. Just a quick question about the personal trainer certification. Where do they find their subjects? The people they're going to try to motivate and.
We are going.
I could sign up. They need to motivate me.
Seeing a good deal here, aren't you?
We have to develop how we wanted to do it because we really want to make sure it's common from north and south. But when I did it at my last school, I had them work with their parents. Nothing more difficult than trying to get your parents to change behavior. So it worked out really well.
That's great. I bet
really
it did.
All right.
One student did choose their best friend, but I said work with your parents and see what kind of changes.
That's interesting, right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, they look
I
really,
don't have much to say on these, but
Really
I want
great.
to go back to the one that leads to certifications. I believe this is a trend that you'll see in a lot of curriculum moving forward, especially like with the stuff that I brought you, defining ready and looking for senior level, junior, senior level courses
Yeah.
that lead to some industry-specific certifications.
That's great.
Right in line with that. So expect to see this as a trend, right? That if our students can leave our schools with an industry-recognized certificate. that puts them-
absolutely.
You bet.
Sure does. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice bow tie, by the way.
Yes.
I didn't want to embarrass him, but
We knew,
I like
yeah,
it
knew
too.
right away where you were coming from.
Thanks, guys.
Sound good.
So our next two are from Career and Technical Education. One is a new course, which is Engineering Design and Development, which is part of our Project Lead the Way sequence. And the other is revisiting a course that we already have, Principles in Engineering, and the request is for a credit change for that course. So one's a completely new course, and the other one is a change to the credit. Okay? With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Mirandola. He is our Department Chair of CT at North High School, and Valerie Moses, who is our Department Chair of CT at South High School, who will explain those two requests for us.
Thank you. And I know that Val shares this same thought, but we want to thank you for your support, especially over the last few years. I know we've proposed a lot of new courses, and you guys have been more than supportive. In fact, last year, I went back, believe it or not, Gina showed it to us, the video from last year's meeting, and actually it was someone suggested, hey, it would be great if your students, your teacher, someone could come back and give us an update or share about the courses that have been proposed. So I'm going to throw that out there, whether or not we can make it happen. But I would love to have some of our teachers, some of our students come in maybe later on in the year.
That would be
to see
great.
if they can talk
It's in the
a
works.
little bit about the impact that these courses have had.
Sure.
Awesome.
That would be very interesting.
Good, good. Well, the course that I'm presenting to you this evening is known as Engineering Design and Development. So this is one of the Project Lead the Way courses. Project Lead the Way is a leading STEM engineering curriculum that partners a lot of your leading engineering universities with technology companies, and so they've created a curriculum. And so this will be a capstone course for us. And so this is a course that's been requested by students, by community members, by our teachers as well. And so this is the next step for us in the engineering curriculum that we've laid out over the last few years. Engineering Design and Development, or EDD, is being proposed as a year-long weighted credit course. It will be open to seniors who have successfully completed one of the other Project Lead the Way courses which we offer, those being Intro to Engineering Design, Principles of Engineering, or Civil Engineering and Architecture. Engineering Design Development is a research course in which students work in teams to design and develop an original solution to a well-defined and justified open-ended problem by applying the engineering design process. Students are partnered with mentors from industry to help with this design and coming up with solutions. This is an opportunity for seniors who excel in our engineering courses to experience a well-structured, open-ended, research-based course rooted in engineering. Student teams will present and defend their original solution to an outside panel of experts, providing an authentic experience. Students will drive their own research and engage in innovation, imagination, collaboration, and communication. We predict one section of this course at each campus, and that's based on current and past year enrollment numbers. We currently have 3 teachers who are capable of teaching this course, 2 of which have expressed interest in undergoing the summer training to be certified to teach this course. To share with you a few examples of what students at other schools have done and what we're hoping that our students are able to replicate. I'm going to just share a few examples. A group of students in Indiana recently designed an innovative emergency shelter for use in disaster areas. This shelter can be airdropped and assembled on ground. Once assembled, it includes shelter and water purification. This process or this emergency relief efforts that they created are actually being vetted by international relief agencies. With the possibility of this going into use. And the students came up with this idea after viewing the relief efforts of Hurricane Katrina and realizing that, there's a problem and this is the solution they can come up with.
Wow.
Another example a little closer to home, a group of students in Woodstock, Illinois spent months studying a local intersection that was seen as problematic. They worked with the McHenry County Transportation Board offering solutions and researching the complete street concept, which allows cars, pedestrians, and bicyclists to coexist. And so they got to work hand in hand with their local transportation authority. And then finally, a group in New Hampshire actually created a new device that's used by EMTs and emergency room staff to electronically remove rings on patients' fingers in an emergency room situation. And so what they actually did was improve upon an existing design. And this design has actually received a patent, and it's in use now by emergency personnel. So seeing these types of things and knowing what our students are capable of and giving them those opportunities is what gets us really excited about, a course like this. It's my hope that you'll soon be hearing about, the wonderful ways that District 99 students have impacted society through their engineering designs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I am really excited about this class.
Yeah,
By complete coincidence, this weekend I was at Northwestern. I have a daughter who was swimming in a swim meet there, and I have a good friend whose daughter is going to school there, biomedical engineering, and she stopped by to visit with me, talked to me about a class she was taking. As a freshman, it's this class. And by amazing coincidence, the project she was working on works with Dive Heart here in Downers Grove, Jim Elliott. She was showing me the pictures of what her team had designed this basket that helps paraplegics get into the water. Because it's all about diving, and I'm familiar. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful, impactful nonprofit. And seeing how excited she was about this and this experience that she's having, I'm going to guess you're going to have more than just one section eventually. I mean, really, because when kids can do something like this and see that they're really making a difference, and they have the chance to make a difference and work with people outside the school building to do these, this is just really, really great.
Very exciting.
So, what a cool class. I wish I could sign up.
Well, that's a good segue. You talked about mentors, and you also talked about a panel. So have you already identified members of the community, or can you expound upon that?
We have not. Over the last few years, we've worked with some engineering and architecture firms in the Downers Grove community. In fact, we have parents that have kind of built in a partnership with us. And so we're looking for better ways to engage those engineers, those architects, those designers in the community. And we see this as that opportunity to really bring them into our classroom and getting them, working with our students. So to answer your question, I don't think we've utilized that as well as we could have up until this point, but this is something that we're definitely excited about because it gives us that opportunity to really bring them in and to get them working with our students.
Is there interest? I mean, do you know that?
With people from the community?
Yeah.
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah.
I have something to say, and it's personal. I want to thank Gina and you guys, because my son would have only had 2 years of this program, because that's all he had on the books. Last year we added the third year. He's only a sophomore, so now he's looking at 3. This year, now he can go all 4 years. And have 4 years of Project Lead the Way. So I thank you. I know those conversations aren't easy, picking and choosing financially
Yeah.
which class to pull from Project Lead the Way, because I know there's costs associated with all of them. I know there had to be a lot, it wasn't just, hey, let's just go do this.
Right.
So I want to say thank you, because my son now, instead of having only 2 years of this, now has a full path for 4.
Awesome. Yeah, that's
So
great.
Loves it. Loves it.
That's
So-
great.
And we're looking for community partners to look at engineering things. I do believe that there's a very large master facilities plan going on in this community that we can start out by looking at.
They can cut our costs by 50%.
In my last school district, they did do that with this course. They looked at some
They
of the
looked at
planning and
costs,
traffic
yeah.
flow and redesigns
Ah.
of traffic flow based on student feedback. So there are
There you go, Jim.
possibilities there.
That's great.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there other comments or questions about EDD before we move to POE?
All these acronyms.
Yeah, PO. Principles of Engineering.
All right.
Thank you.
Good evening. You may recall that the current credit weight that we have for POE and IED is really based upon a best guess. The course proposal process occurs well before the Project Lead the Way teacher training and the release of the full Project Lead the Way course curriculum. So the proposal was made with the intention always to revisit the weighting of IED and POE after the 2 courses had been taught for a couple of years.
Okay.
So we're no longer guessing. We now have 3 staff members trained to teach the curriculum who have an understanding of what is expected of students. Staff now have access to the full curriculum and have been implementing that curriculum for 2 years. So we are requesting a credit change for POE, Principles of Engineering. The criteria we believe supports our request is that honors credit is assigned to those courses in selected disciplines where course content is similar or equal to the content in the university level courses. So POE is accepted for credit at numerous universities. NIU awards up to 7 credits for Project Lead the Way engineering courses.
Wow.
University of Iowa awards credit for their introduction to class in the engineering sequence known as engineering problem solving. All of their incoming engineering students have to take that class. Wichita State University awards 3 hours of credit for introduction to engineering. Other colleges providing the opportunity for college credit for Project Lead the Way engineering courses include East Michigan University, Purdue University, Milwaukee School of Engineering, Morehead State University, University of Northern Iowa, University of Wisconsin-Platteville, etc. I'm sure you had a chance to look at the link provided, but those are some of the ones that are closest to us. Secondly, a CTE DC and a Physics 400 teacher met to discuss the curriculum of POE. The Physics 400 teacher concurred that POE would be equivalent to or greater than the rigor and pacing of Physics 400. Additionally, the current POE teacher is a certified physics teacher. So we are confident that she has a good understanding of both POE and physics content and is providing the rigor and pacing of honors curriculum. Lastly, in the letter, you found a link to a chart that captures area school practice. Of the 10 school districts who offer POE, 7 offer it for weighted credit, and 1 of those 7 offer it for accelerated credit, which in that district is greater than honors credit. So lastly, Mark, and I do think it is worth noting that this request is only for POE. We feel that the best guess we made a couple years ago was accurate with regard to regular credit weighting for IED. So Mark and I are happy to answer any questions that don't require us to do anything with physics.
Bring your formula sheets.
I haven't. Don't ask me to use it.
Any questions about this
No, I think it
request?
looks great.
We're excited about them. Thank you.
Very, thank you. That's really great.
For you to escape.
Our next area comes from English and Communications. We have 2 courses. The first course is Advanced Journalistic Writing Honors. The second course is Freshman Sophomore Seminar.
Yeah.
We have asked the English department to kind of host this course, if you will. But this course is not necessarily an English course. It is not a course that students will get an English credit for. It is not necessarily even a course that an English teacher has to teach. That said, we have...
What are you doing here?
Wait, you're staying. However, so it is a course, we have several English teachers that we believe could teach the course, so don't misunderstand me. We feel that a lot of the strategies that students will learn in the course, some of the content does relate to English, but it can relate to social studies, to science, to other areas as well. However, we have asked Tracy Sebastian, who is our chair at South High, new chair to us, and Chris Bronke, who is our chair at North High, to kind of lead this course. And we've been working collaboratively. Teachers have had input, administrations had input, the chairs have worked diligently on the course. But I do want to point out that that second one is not necessarily a traditional English course. Okay? We're going to begin with the Advanced Journalistic Writing Honors course. And I will turn it over to Chris.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for having us tonight. It's been a while since I've been here to present in a board meeting and never for a new class, so this is an exciting experience here. Really, I'm looking forward to this Advanced Journalistic Writing Honors. It's an extension of what we are currently doing. So it's a weighted course where we're taking the students who would take the journalistic expression and media literacy, which is basically what we call like our Journalism 1 class, who want to continue in the journalism field. They would usually then enroll in Journalism 2 or Advanced Journalism. And what we're looking to try and do is add within that Advanced Journalism section a stack with an honors option. So we're not looking necessarily back to your initial question about will this pull from other classes, add to FTE concerns or constraints. It's not. It would be the students who are already enrolled in Advanced Journalistic Writing having the chance to choose to take that for an honors credit to do some additional work. I like, Val just a little bit ago talking about the honors definition of, work that could be expected in the college program, and that's what we're looking to try and do. These students will continue to be the main driving force behind creating the school newspapers. That's the bulk of the work within that course. But that work in and of itself is rather time consuming. And it doesn't necessarily within the workload of a non-honors bearing class allow for some other types of journalism that would be things students would experience in, let's say, a college journalism class. So for example, things like long-form journalism, some of the longer pieces that you're seeing in the Atlantic that, these authors for a living are writing 4 pieces a year. Because the research is so deep, so comprehensive. Things like stuff you might see from like Ta-Nehisi Coates, those sorts of things. And that's something that there are students in our schools and in our programs that have a desire to do and a desire to move on and do in college. And so we're hoping by adding this honors credit that they will get rewarded for their desire to want to do this by having the ability to get that instruction and that practice and those writing experiences, and then also by getting the honors designation for that. They'll also work to put together a digital portfolio, which requires them by default. This digital portfolio is overseen by one of the NJEA or the National Journalism Education Association, and it requires by default them to do a wide range of journalistic writing, so they can't just get into their niche lane and say like, well, I'm a sports writer, so that's what I do. They'll be required to write multiple different types of pieces, as well as think about things like photojournalism, so thinking about text in a more complex and varied way. And then the other thing that's really cool that we're excited for is this idea that the teachers have wanted to do this for a while, but again, have felt like this class already puts such a burden on these students with the amount of work that they're doing that it's unfair to ask this of them. But with this honors credit, they feel as if they can. And that's to explore some cross-town pieces where students are co-authoring for them to be in both schools' newspapers. Cool for the community, for the district, for the schools, and also a really unique challenge for the students as they try to think about writing for an audience that now is different than that they know. How do I, as a North High student, think about conceptualizing my writing for a South High student audience and vice versa? So they're excited about those sorts of possibilities as well.
Okay. So our second course, as Gina said, is a freshman/sophomore seminar, because what we'd be looking at is in the first semester, it would be a sophomore half-year elective credit. In the second semester, it would be for freshmen. So in that way, we would then use freshman teachers. So we would take current freshman teachers now and poll them and survey them and ask them if this was the student we were looking for, who in your current freshman classes would likely be in that sophomore class first semester. So we would have that population for the first semester, and then during that course next year, while the sophomores are taking the course, we would then poll current freshman teachers of those freshmen and ask them who would be in for the second semester, so we can get polled populations in those courses. As Gina said, it's not an English credit, but we are housing it in English so that somebody's taking care of it, somebody's looking after it, somebody's in charge of it, somebody's overseeing it. So we would be doing that. So it would, again, not have to necessarily be an English teacher. We would want to find whoever is the best fit for teaching that particular course. Once we've had it approved, and we can actually put that out there and see who might be interested, not just from English. I would start with my English teachers. As Gina said, we have plenty that we know are qualified to do this who might want to do this. But if based on other things that they teach, there's not room in the schedule, we'd also like to open it up to others. So it is not something that has to be within English, and it is an elective credit, not an English credit. This course is intended to serve a population that we think is completely underserved. We have a population of students who are not reading at grade level, who we have an intervention course for. We have a population of students who we believe are on to an honors track or an AP course, and we can put them in Avid and help them succeed in that realm. But then we have a pocket of students in between who are reading at grade level, who we don't necessarily expect to go to an honors or AP class, but they really struggle in school for some reason. So we've got to figure out, well, if they don't need reading support and they're not really going to be headed towards an AP course, how do we get them support they need to help them, as we've been saying, to do school better, so that their actual grades and their academic success could be on par with their peers, the same way their standardized test scores that show that they should be, but for some reason they're not succeeding in school. So we see that many of these students are disorganized. They don't know how to manage their time. So they may have 3 upcoming assignments to do in 3 classes, but they don't realize that they have to plan all of those out, and how to plan all those out, and how to start some now. And in their mind, they're not due for a while, so they leave all 3 of them off, and they don't know how to manage their time or how to do school. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. They're not sure how to go get the help that they need. They're not sure where to go get the help that they need. So these are the kinds of things that we would be working on in this course with these students, because again, they don't need the reading intervention help, and they're not ready to go to those other high-end courses. So we need something for them that will help them be more successful in school now, and then be able to take all that with them outside of the school and be more successful in their post-school careers too as well. We are hoping that this class will do that. So a lot of things that we would like to focus on with them is to develop tools to navigate school. That's how we're thinking of it. Like, how do you do school better? You have the reading skills, and we know that you can do it, but there's something that's holding you back. There's something that you're not able to do. So we would set goals with them in the classroom. We would monitor the progress. We would have the students monitor the progress. We would have them learn how to advocate for themselves. Where can you go to find help? How can you ask for the help? How can you tell your teacher what you don't know how to do, and how can you ask for the help, and where can you go get it, and how can you make sure that's happening? We'll help them recognize when they have a problem. A lot of times they don't realize they have a problem. So help them recognize they have a problem, and then figure out, what are the ways that I could solve this problem? What are the different avenues that I have available to me, and help them figure out how to do that. We also feel that a lot of them need to work on their communication skills. So we would work on a lot of things that just develop their communication skills. We would work in small groups with scenarios and help them figure out, how do I communicate better with my teachers? What are the different ways I can communicate with my teachers? What are the different ways I can communicate with my peers? A lot of them struggle in class to do just that as well, and that's another reason they're not successful. They don't know how to do that in a classroom. So we would incorporate things like that as well. We would hope to develop some perseverance in them and get them past those problems, because now they know how to, and before they would get stuck in the problem, and then it would just seem too much and they give up. And then the other thing we'd like to do in this class is incorporate some guided study time with them, both with the teacher and with their peers in small groups, so that they're getting a little bit of the academic piece in there as well, and helping them figure out, well, what are some of my deficits? What are some ways that I need to work on these deficits? And have the teacher do some kinds of mini lessons with them as they realize some of the things. If they have multiple students in that class that all struggle with math, they could create, sort of like an Avid does, tutorials that work on that math subject together, so that they can work on it together, and the teacher can interject and help as well, or help them figure out how to get the help and bring it into the classroom as well. So again, we just feel like this is a course that can help students that they're sort of the forgotten ones, because they don't have this problem. We don't see them as going in this strand. So they're there in our classes in a regular level and in these classes, but they're struggling. But we know they're not struggling because they have reading problems, and they're not struggling for other reasons. They're struggling because they can't really figure out how to do school well enough.
that they're successful. So we'd like to give them the tools that they need to be successful, like their peers.
How many students do you see, or do you anticipate would have this problem, or that would be?
We debated on this back and forth and how I think, we're thinking 1 to 2 sections at each school to start.
That
to
many?
see,
Yeah.
And that's, and again, we'd be polling the teachers to find out.
Right.
And basing it on that, so we would know, have a better idea once we get into that process, but we're, based on what we kind of know.
Yeah.
We're thinking 1 to 2 sections with about 15 to 18 kids in class.
Well, and one of the things I think that's important to note, again, just to break out of the fact that this is an English department class, but not an English class. This has been something that we've been working on, even with our strategies for academic success classes that have been running for forever. Is making sure that the recommendation process is robust as possible, and not just coming from us to our English teachers, but to all of the freshman teachers to see what students are struggling, and to be able to sort of look at that from a quantitative standpoint, right? Doing it through something as easy as Google Forms allows us to sort the spreadsheet by last name and see this kid showed up 8 times, and only has 7 teachers. So something's an issue here, right? Where this kid's only on there once, and maybe we go talk to that teacher to see, okay, we can probably be okay with this kid not getting that sport, but even in doing just that recommendation process, we have a whole other layer of ways to get names that we want to track, not from what class we put them in, but progress monitor that we wouldn't have known it before.
Would you see it as a way too, by doing that process, even if we do not feel a student belongs in this course, that gives us an opportunity to identify a student that we can then say to the counselors or to another team, somebody needs to watch the student, like somebody's saying something about this student.
One concern I have is that freshmen particularly they just don't have the opportunity for many electives freshman year. And so you might be asking a student to do this instead of choir, or and student might love choir and not be willing. So as much as they need this, they end up not doing it. So how did you?
One of the challenges is if they don't know how to do school, eventually they're not going to be able to do choir anyway, because they're going to fail enough courses that they won't have space for electives, because they're going to get filled in with retaking the same courses over again. So you try to catch them early,
and release them to the
then
fact
get
they
them
have
back.
3 more
go
full
take choir
years
later.
to be able to do those.
So then this is kind of a segue then to my next question, and that is, if we were a K through 12 district, is this something we would be doing like in 8th grade? 7th grade?
Maybe not. Sometimes kids get to high school.
That was what I was going to say.
They
You might be
navigate
catching
sometimes
kids who are,
K-8 when they have a teacher with the same teacher with them all day, or a team of teachers in middle school. But then when they get into our larger population or our structure, they just can't do high school.
So one of the reasons we chose to do the structure that we did was for that exact reason. So that it's our teachers specifically recommending them and not a recommendation from a middle school. So we have our freshman teacher recommending for the sophomore class, and then while the sophomores are taking it, it's the current freshman teachers recommending for the freshman population. Because that's one of the things we looked at is there are a lot of students who do middle school well, who do grade school well, and then they come here and the 7, 8 different classes, switching nonstop, all the different people you have to communicate with, suddenly is a problem, and that sort of starts to fall apart for them. And I heard teachers, I've taught freshmen for 19 years, and I always had parents come in and say, like, my kid always did fine until they got here.
Yeah, what's your
And I always say, well, what do you see them struggling with? And a lot of times it was, well, they can't organize themselves. They can't manage the fact that they have 8 different assignments from 8 different teachers at 8 different revolving times, and they can't figure out. Because when they're in middle school, a lot of times they're in teams, and the team will say, well, we know the social science project's coming up, so we're not going to give them the English project now. We're going to wait on the math thing, and that doesn't happen in high school, so then it becomes a big problem for students.
So part of where I was going with this is I mean, I support the class. I definitely do. And I agree. This is an underserved. What about those kids?
That kid's in the middle.
But wondering too, are there more things that could be done at the middle school level to help prepare? That more things that we could partner with, and have you talked about that as well in conjunction with this?
I kind of like the fact that it's not coming from the junior. This is coming from my own experience. I've had 3 kids come through, and I did have one who did really well all the way through. Got to, her freshman year, okay? And was always a very good student, but then, got into whatever activities and everything, and then there's that whole social network, which becomes much bigger and
important too,
larger
to
in
them.
high school. And all of a sudden, they become very overwhelmed. And then they sort of almost they get like tired. They don't know which one to do first, so maybe they didn't do it. And it's time management and all that. And I kind of like it. This isn't like your typical like struggling child who's come through 5th, 6th. This is somebody who now all of a sudden is within our system
is
here,
struggling.
and all of a sudden you're seeing that student sort of sizzle and dissolve a little bit, and so it's kind of our way of coming in and sort of yanking them up, right, and saying, hey, what's going on with you, and here are these tools that we're going to use to kind of structure you, get you back on path again.
So Gina,
I think it's good.
one second. Gina, am I correct that we do have programmatically things in place for students we have identified in 8th grade that need these supports coming in?
And
you're right, Mike. There are students that we've identified that are this way coming through our doors, and we're there. And we also collaborate with our middle schools about what skills.
expect.
What I was getting to is kind of what Deb was expressing. 'Cause I had a little bit of a similar experience with one of my students. We have in 7th and 8th grade, you're targeting a group but the reality is that there's students there who you can't identify yet. And so this is really something that, across, all of the students in 7th and 8th grade, maybe there's a little bit more that could be done in terms of preparation than this is solving a problem. We receive the students. This is great, right? It makes sense to me what you've explained. You have to get through some of the freshman year so that we can do our own analysis and say, okay, here. But so I'm just saying, in conjunction with all this is one solution. But boy, if there was some way that we could diminish the need for it, that would be great.
I think one of the things that having this class will allow us to do is more succinctly build that profile.
Oh, I get it.
So that we can have that conversation. Because we did talk about opening this up to the 8th grade teachers to start, and we kind of said, we don't know well enough how to get that profile. And we already have a lot of other profiles we're putting at these 8th grade teachers who think about this for one day, once a year when they sit down to make a recommendation. And we're thinking about it consistently.
No,
So I think
this is a great point.
to answer that question, I think that could get to that now that we'll have a chance to better profile that student.
And some of these structures, freshman teachers just build into their curriculum. But if we start to notice that there's a trend, we could just start to strategically build that into every freshman class, right? So
we're going to learn from this.
It starts allowing us to more scientifically look at how we approach the needs for kids.
Makes a lot of sense.
I had a question regarding the other class, which sounds like a very powerful class, but it sounds as though it's a lot. You even said, we're asking them to do a lot, not only the newspaper and et cetera, et cetera. So do you anticipate it might be a little too much pressure for them, or how are you seeing that?
Yes and no. The nice thing is that they don't have to take it as this honors class, and there's no impact on our scheduling one way or the other. Because we're going to, right now at North High,
that's true.
The J2 class is running 4th hour. It's going to run 4th hour again next year, whether there's the honors or not. It would just be the kids can choose to do that. So it's not going to we're going to try to run it not.
Understood.
I think the other thing too is that the students will have about 3 weeks before they actually have to decide if they want to do it as the honors class or not.
Oh, okay.
So they'll have a chance to get acclimated, get into the class.
Really
a lot
talk
of
with
these
the teachers.
students too will have taken J2 already.
Yeah.
So they will have already been through it as a non-honors class and be able to say, as a junior, that was perfect, and now I get it, because I understand all the daily routine of the cadence of work for the newspaper is.
Yeah.
Go ahead and bring on some extra work for me at this point. Yeah.
I fully support it, but I was just curious about that.
Thank you.
And that's the nice part about it, running concurrent or being a combo course type of combined blended course, is the fact that students could step up, even step up for 2 weeks and do it and be like, Whoa. This isn't what I thought it was.
So
and
it's
then
in the same.
It's all.
They would take it at the same class period because it's already highly individualized based on the work that they do.
Yeah, it almost sounds like
So it's almost like an individual plan for each student.
More assignments or something for
the students that are in the honors.
They'd all be in the same class period with the same teacher.
Okay, all right.
I have a daughter who is hoping this would happen. Yep.
All right, any other
Thank you, no.
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
These are great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
You too. Yeah.
All right.
All right, any other questions about the curriculum proposals in
Wait a minute.
general?
These are great.
Just a reminder, these come back next week to be voted on and
guys
approved.
have something to
So
say
you have a
tonight?
week. If you
Anything
walk out
to
of
say
here,
tonight?
something pops into your,
We're here for you.
Oh, good. That's so comforting.
somebody, a question pops into your mind going out of tonight's meeting or whatever, please reach out to myself and I will ask Gina and get back to you and the rest of the board with whatever question you have. So just follow the general protocol. Send any questions to me and we'll get an answer and get back to you by next week.
Thank you. Very good. Wonderful classes. It's going to be exciting. Our next item on the agenda is the 17-18 staffing ratios.
So we have an update on this. We don't have numbers, but Pete's going to provide a little background as to how we got here and what to expect going forward.
Yes, so I think in September we started having conversations at the administrative cabinet level about the accuracy of what we call the CSD numbers. In 2011, he had done the most recent demographic study for us. If you remember, he's got those 3 tracks, A, B, and C. We have always traditionally gone with the B level. But we've started to see the last couple of years the kind of discrepancy between the north and south buildings compared to his report, though the overall district numbers were close. And so we talked about it a little bit at our cabinet level, and we thought, coming through the recession and some of the other economic factors that may have contributed to the numbers being off, it might be a good idea for us to recommission John Casarda to do this again. So we reached out to Casarda, who was actually in China at the time, so there was a little bit of a delay in response initially. And he was interested in doing that, and so we spent some time, Mark, Julie, Jill, Gina, myself, trying to collect various pieces of information to share with Casarda so that he could put his report together. Some of the challenges of this are always that, we know what our numbers are here, but we need some help from some other folks for things like, housing projects that are being considered in the pipeline, current enrollment numbers in some of the feeder districts, et cetera. And so we've had some challenges getting all of that information. And then most recently, we were able to supply that to Mr. Casarda on Wednesday, and then I got some emails over the weekend where he was questioning the validity of one of the feeder district numbers. So we've had some conversation today where they confirmed that yes, the numbers were incorrect, and thus they needed to spend some more time getting those corrected and back to us to share a second time with Mr. Casarda. So, as you change from one student information system to another with various different reports that you do for the state, the 6-day housing report and all those kinds of things, numbers can get transposed, things can miss a cell or whatever. So they were thankful to hear that we may have caught something for them, but we don't have the final numbers from Casarda yet. The memo that you traditionally get, I'm just kind of waiting for those final numbers so I can update the charts to share with you. As soon as I get those, we'll be able to get that to you probably within a day. So traditionally, we give you kind of where we see things now in December, and then at the January business meeting, that's when you approve the FTE. So we still see that being able to happen. You may not just get the full month to consider it. It may be more like, the 19th or 20th of December, you'll get that data, and then have that time period to pose any questions that you might have. We'll have the January workshop meeting, but we're just a little bit delayed, but the process will still be very similar.
Pete, I have a question. What's the general time frame when you do a resurvey? Is it every 5, every 10, every 15?
In looking at what we have done, it's been about every 5 years in District 99. We're right about on...
Do then?
Yeah.
Okay. And typically, what's the cost?
This is $6,000, which was half of what one of our feeder districts, who's also doing this kind of work this fall, spent on theirs.
Really? We like Mr. Casarda.
We like him. He's awesome.
And part of that is because we were doing some of the legwork to then hand him. Right. So
we like you too.
Yes.
We were yes.
Yeah, we like you too.
We're the other.
Heard the cost.
We did. Yes.
Over the years, it's been very, very close.
Yes. He has been.
His methodology is very strong.
Yeah, we just felt like, we had at least 2 years in a row now where the building numbers were off enough that we thought, let's take another look.
It's about time.
Yeah, because it's really increasing in north and not in south.
Right.
Well,
compared to what he had projected.
For now.
Yeah.
In the recession and
Absolutely.
huge impact on demographics and trends, and so makes sense.
Let's take a look at it.
You'll take into account those new housing subdivisions.
Yes. Yeah. Mark was able to get numbers from various entities, and those are all part of what we turned over to Mr. Casarda.
Good.
Thanks. Just wanted to say that even though the time frame might be a little different, it follows exactly what we've been doing with most of our decision making. Right, you'll at least get it digitally in advance. We'll have board workshop.
Still talk about it in January.
And then vote on it in January. So, although it might be different, it's not out of line of other decision making processes that we're following.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Pete. Next is the reception of visitors. This is the opportunity for the audience members to address the board on any topic pertaining to district government. And I'm assuming I don't need to read this.
No,
And it's really bothering my throat. But is there anything else to come before us?
Move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll second that.
Julia seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Motion carries.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.